tonight's topic that we're going to be talking about with regards to, again, under the unit of the virtue of seeking the truth, seeking and upholding the truth. One of the subjects that fall under this particular unit is a very serious violation the Prophet ﷺ talked about. I mentioned it last week. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ was asked, in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr, you find this hadith in al-Bukhari, the Prophet was asked about the major sin, the deadliest, most destructive sins. So he said, al-ishraku billah, to associate partners with Allah. وَعُقُوقُ الْوَالِدَيْنِ, and to offend one's parents. وَقَتْلُ النَّفْسِ, and to murder someone, right? To kill an innocent person, to take the life of an innocent person. Then he said, وَالْيَمِينُ الْغَمُوسِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, وَالْيَمِينُ الْغَمُوسِ. Yameen means oath, right? That's what yameen means. So the Sahaba said, what is yameen ghamus, Messenger of Allah? He said, it's basically a false oath that someone takes, right? With which that person, الَّذِي يَقْتَطِعُ مَالَ امْرِئٍ مُسْلِمٍ, with which someone takes the property or the wealth of another Muslim. Right? So someone will swear by Allah Azza wa Jal, or on the Mus'haf, someone will take an oath, right? Knowing that they're lying, that they actually have a right to something that they don't have a right to. So it's basically someone making a claim, right? And taking under oath, making a claim to something that doesn't belong to them, right? And taking it. The Prophet ﷺ, in another hadith on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, he said, من حلف على مال امرئ مسلم بغير حقه لقي الله وهو عليه غضبان. Whosoever takes an oath, right, to claim the wealth of someone else, of another Muslim, that person will end up meeting with Allah, will end up returning to Allah Azza wa Jal, and Allah will be angry at him. He will basically earn the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Why? Because not only is this person taking something that doesn't belong to them, knowingly that they know that it doesn't belong to them, but they're actually using the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to what? To obtain that right. Right? As a matter of fact, when it comes to invoking the name of Allah, like when swear, like saying wallahi, or Allah ki qasam, or by Allah, right? Or people say, I swear to this. The scholars see that sort of behavior and that habit is a very bad habit that a person should not engage in, especially when it comes to something that has to do with their livelihood. Like, for instance, if you are selling something, or if you're providing a service, never use the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, never, right, swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to market yourself or your product or your service, right? Or to convince, your customer or your client or any, potential buyer or whatever it might be, right? And I mentioned to you the story. It's kind of funny, but, there's a lesson in it. The story of Al-Hasan al-Basri, rahimahullah, right? He said he performed Hajj, right? And then normally people after Hajj or Umrah, what do? After they finish, they go what? They go shopping. They shop, right? For their loved ones, So he went shopping. He wanted to buy some fabric. So he said, I found this man who had very good quality fabric. But the whole time he was saying, Wallahi, Wallahi, left and right. Right? I have the best, this is the best deal. Any customer that comes to him, he said, كان يكثر الحلف. He said he was using, like, he was doing half, qasam. He was, swearing by Allah Azza wa Jal a lot, too much. And I said to myself, this person has no, like, his work ethics are not good. And he said, I said to myself, لا ينبغي أن يشترى. He said, a person like this should not be supported. I wouldn't give him my business. I don't want. So he said, though I was interested in the products that he had, good quality, he said, I ended up going and buying from someone else, right? Because I just didn't like his behavior. I didn't like his work ethics. So he said, time goes by. After a long time, Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah comes back again for another season. Not the following year, but after some years. He comes back, and he said, I went to the marketplace, and I ran into the same person. He said he looks like the same person, but he's behaving completely differently. He is not going after his customers. He's not swearing by Allah. He's just completely changed. So I was intrigued by that. So I went and I approached him. I said, aren't you the one that, like, few years ago used to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sell your products, and you used to be very anxious, and you were very aggressive in approaching your customers and stuff like that, right? And then he said, and I didn't really, I was offended by your behavior, and aren't you the same person? He said, by Allah, I am the same person. He said, I am indeed the same person. He's like, so, he said, what changed? What happened? He said, well, I used to be married to this woman that whenever I bring anything home, she belittles it. She's like, that's it? That's all you got? Like, in أتيتها, he said, in أتيتها بكثير نزرت. So إن أتيتها بكثير قللت وإن أتيتها بقليل نزرت. He said, if I bring her a lot of money, she looks at it like, this is it? She's never grateful. Like, that's it? That's all? He said, and if I bring very little, if I don't bring much, she said she just dumps it. Like, she doesn't even, like, look at it. She just completely ignores me. So I was desperate to always make, a lot of money. He said, and then what happened? So he said, فَنَظَرَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ فَأَمَاتَهَا. So he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, took her away. She died. He actually, the way he expressed it, he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me a relief, and Allah took her away. So he said, then I married this woman that would tell me every time before I leave to work, Ya Abdullah, O servant of Allah, fear Allah, ittaqillah, وَلَا تُطْعِمْنَا إِلَّا حَلَالًا, and do not bring us home, do not feed us, don't earn except something that is pure halal. Right? إِنْ أَتَيْتَنَا بِقَلِيلٍ كَثَّرْنَا. She said to him, if you bring us very little, it doesn't matter. We will manage. And Allah will bless it. And I will make sure that it's enough. And if you don't bring anything, on a bad day, you don't earn anything, you don't bring anything, you don't make any sales, right? أَعَلْنَاكَ بِغَزْلِ. I will help you. I will work and I will help you. I'll assist you. Just don't feel like you have to what? To desperately, like, do something. Just maintain your work ethics, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your work. So Hasan al-Basri said, okay, that's what it is. He said, and this was one of the most valuable practical lessons I learned in my life. And he said, indeed, who you choose as your partner would have an impact on how you behave. The point here is that he detested the fact that the man was using the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sell his products. By Allah this, by Allah that. Right? And scholars said that even if someone asks you to swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You shouldn't do it. If someone says, so what do you think of this? Well, it's a good quality. Would you swear by Allah? Say Wallah. She said, listen, I'm not. You trust me and you look at it, you like it, take it, you don't like it. Right? By the way, in sales, one of the most, I used to be a salesperson. One of the most amazing things that you need to do is, first of all, earn your customers' trust. If they feel like you really care about them, and the same thing applies to any client or patients, by the way. If they feel that you genuinely care about them and you're giving them full attention, they will trust you. That's number one. Number two, right? Tell them the, you know how like you're supposed to tell the good things first, and then you tell them if you're honest, then you tell the bad things, right? If you start telling them the cons, and then you bring the pros. When you tell them the cons, one, they trust you. When you bring the pros, right, that's what they're going to end up remembering, right? But if you do it the other way around, like if you just tell them all the good things, and if it's a smart customer, they ask you, what do you mean? Like this cannot be the most like the perfect product. And then you bring in, well, some reviews say this and that, or if they themselves come with knowledge and they start, questioning your knowledge or your narrative, that's it. You're not going to earn their trust after that, right? And very often, by the way, people, once they earn your trust, they're actually most likely to upgrade to something better if you recommend it, right? Anyways, so yeah, of course that's not what they tell you in sales. They'll tell you, yeah, never give them your own personal opinion, right? Right? You never tell them. Let them make the decision. You don't want them to blame you for it. Yeah. And by the way, anytime someone tells you, trust me, right? If a salesperson, if a lawyer, who else says trust me a lot? Who else says stuff like that? If a scholar, counselor, if someone keeps telling you trust me, then you may have a reason not to trust them. What's that? They're not very confident. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's really the individual's, the salesperson's product knowledge. Like, how much do they know about the product? How much do they know? Same thing with any profession. It's just what the person is willing to share in a very simple way. It breaks it down to the person, to the individual, that makes the other person connect with them. But swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the way to do it, to earn people's trust. And if someone actually does it knowing that they're actually making a false statement, right? This is considered to be one of the, like in this particular hadith, in one of the hadith, Prophet mentions four major sins. And he mentions this to be one of them, right? So if you collect all the hadith in which the Prophet talks about the most destructive major sins, and if we come up with a list of like 40, or even a list of 10, this particular act and habit is in the top 10 worst major sins. Now, there's also something called lagw al-yamin. Just sometimes people say wallahi casually, right? Wallahi, and they don't really they don't really mean it. First of all, this is a bad adab. A person should not do that. Wallahi, the other day I went and I saw this, wallahi, the most beautiful deer ever, right? And then subhanallah, I fed it, and wallahi, it came and just started basically feeding right out of my. You don't need to say wallahi. Now, sometimes people make an oath. They swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do something or not to do something, and then they break that oath, right? Or they break that yameen, that right? In this case, right, very common mistake a lot of people say is like, just fast 3 days, right? Okay. Now, if you make a yameen, if you swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, and your intention is not to do something, and you swear by Allah you won't do it, and then you end up doing it, right? And you were actually, at the time when you made that statement, you actually really meant it. You weren't just casually throwing it. Like you weren't casually just saying, wallahi. You actually meant it. You actually told your child, for instance, if I ever catch you going to this website, I'm going to take the laptop away from you, or I'm going to take the phone away from you. And you really meant it. You weren't just like calling them bluff. You weren't just threatening them. You meant it. At that moment, you really meant it. And then what happens? You catch them going to the restricted website, for instance, right? Now, you have two options. One, right? You keep your oath and you actually act upon it and you take it away. And that's the right thing to do. Two, you know your child desperately needs the laptop and you won't be able to take it away from them, right? Or mommy comes and talks to you. She's like, oh my God, please, it's okay, and all that. Let's put some apps that will block it and stuff like that. And then you end up not taking it away from them. Now you have done what? You broke your yameen. In this case, the kafara for this, does this sound like a very familiar? Okay. In this case, the kafara is what? It's not fasting 3 days. Actually, yes. The kafara goes in this order. Number one, إطعام عشرة مساكين من أوسط ما تطعمون أهليكم أو كسوتهم. It is to feed 10 miskin, full meals. 10 full meals to one individual, right? Or 1 meal to 10 individuals, to 10 people. And the better thing to do is to feed 10 people 1 full meal. Or 1 full day, like a whole day worth of meals. To feed 10 miskin. Or أو كسوتهم, or to get them what? Clothes. Yani to get them enough clothing to 10 people. Right? فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ, if you can't afford to do this, or if you can't find miskin that you can feed that will qualify, then فَتَحْرِيرُ الرَّقَبَةِ, to free a slave, which is not what? Which is not feasible now. It's not possible to free a slave. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ, whoever cannot afford to do that or is not capable of doing that, that's when the person fasts for 3 days. Right? You don't go to the fasting of 3 days right away. No, the kafara for yameen is actually what? Paying to, like feeding 10 miskin or clothing them. Right? So that's the kafara. And that is feasible now. So, and this is one of these things, one of the misconceptions that we need to change. When people do this, they need to what? To make sure that they do that. Feed 10 miskin. All right? That's the option that they have. Now, if someone is completely broke, they cannot afford to do that, then in that case, they have to fast three days. There is a scenario where someone may actually take an oath to do something that is bad or that is haram. In this particular case, it becomes wajib on that person to actually break their oath. Like if someone says that, wallahi, I will never talk to you again, to someone that they have to talk to, right? For instance, Abu Atta and I, we cannot say, listen, I'm not going to talk to you ever again. We cannot boycott each other. We cannot. If I offend him, if he's upset, if I'm upset, we have 3 days to reconcile. 3 days to cool off, calm down, and then we have to reconcile. It's, we can't cut off that bond. If someone says, wallahi, by Allah, I will never talk to this person, or I will never contact my relative, or I will never visit my cousin, or I will never talk to my brother or sister, they cannot keep it. This is an oath that they have to break. Right? So one is wajib upon them to break. 2, they have to do the kafara. Right? Yeah. هذه الآية أمامي سبحان الله. No. So one has to be very, very careful. Same thing if someone makes an oath uh, takes an oath not to do something good. Let's say someone comes and tells you, "Ya akhi, why didn't you donate to the masjid?" Wallahi, I will never donate to this masjid. You actually swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to do something good. There was a story where two companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of them was telling the other one, "Please give me some time. Give me a break or give me some time." It turned out that one of them owed the other one money, and he said, "Listen, you need to pay me back." So he's like, "I don't have it now. Do you mind just give me some time? I'll pay you back. Just give me some time." He's like, "Wallahi la af'al. By Allah, I will not do that. You have to pay me now." The Prophet ﷺ overheard this and he came out, rushing. He said, "Who's this person that swears by Allah not to do something good? يتألى على الله من ذا الذي يتألى ألا يصنع الخير أو يصنع المعروف." It's so there's a lot of khair in actually just giving them a slack and giving them some time. Right? Why would you say by Allah I will not do that? Say, "Listen, no, sorry, I cannot do it." But just don't swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's like someone saying, "Wallahi, I will not give sadaqah." Or, "Wallahi, I will not pray sunnah." It's just, right? What do they call this? Huh? Imagine someone saying, "By Allah, I'm not going to do something that pleases Allah." Why would you say that? So the Prophet said, you can't do something like this. All right. There's also this this practice, this trick, right, that some people use. They will swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on something with intending something else. Okay, what does this mean? Right? In the hadith of Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, "يمينك على ما يصدقك عليه صاحبك." وفي رواية أنه قال اليمين على نية المستحلف. What does this mean? What does this mean? Right? Someone comes and says to you, usually this happens between couples for some reason, I don't know why. Yeah, someone comes and tells you, "Did you take care of such and such?" And you're like, "Yes." And then the person says, "Swear by Allah." You swear by Allah, and you're like, "Wallahi." Your niyyah is, "Wallahi, I will do it." That's your intention. Right? But the person understands it to be wallahi for what? For what the question was about, what they were inquiring. Right? Or sometimes people will say, "By Allah, I did such and such and such and such." Not. You know what I'm talking about? Right? Okay. Or, "This is for you." Not. Right? "I bought this for you." Wallahi, I bought this for you. Right? And then in their head, like, they will say something. They will make a different statement. Right? As childish as this sounds, this actually happens. So the Prophet ﷺ says, your yameen is in accordance with Allah Azza wa Jalla. You will be held accountable based on what the person who's actually you're swearing to, like the person that you're actually talking to, what that person believes it to be, not what you intend it to be. So if you have a different intention, is not accepted. So no one can say, "Well, I didn't lie. I said, because I intended something different." Right? So something to be aware of as well, and this hadith is in Sahih Muslim. Right? Okay. Any questions about this? Any questions about this? About Yamin? So, things for us to remember. One, we shouldn't swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless we have to. Right? Don't take an oath unless you have to. When you go in front of a judge or in a courtroom, you have to actually raise your hand and you have to take an oath. You have to, right? So unless you have to, don't do it. That's number one. Number two, if we do it, then it better be true, right? To the best of our knowledge. Right? Number three, if we violate our oath or if we break our oath, right, then we have to make sure that we fulfill the kafara, and that is feeding 10 miskin. Number four, if we make an oath, right, or if we take an oath, or if we swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do something bad or not to do something good, then that is an oath that has to be broken, right? And kafara has to be also paid as well for that oath, right? A person who actually, by the way, takes an oath not to do something good, that person is committing a double violation. One violation, for instance, if it has to do with cutting off your kinship or your relatives. There's this one cousin that you were offended one day because they said something or because they, and then you're like, that's it, I'm cutting this person off, and you swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to ever talk to them again. You can't do that. One, you're doing qat'ur rahim, you're cutting off, you're severing the ties of your kinship, which is haram in and of itself. Two, you're swearing by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't do that. Right? You reconnect with them. Now, if it's someone that abuses you or someone who is, toxic, you can keep safe distance, but you cannot cut them off completely. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Allah knows best. Any questions about